Okay. Let's see what I can do here. Hello, everybody. This Good Friday weekend day. Hope everybody's doing okay. Um, a lot of people have been having you know, hard time understanding the haplogroups and the genetic family trees and things like that. So I just wanted to review a little bit of what it is and what you have to do to understand it. So uh, it's it was hard for me to understand, especially at the beginning. But what really helps you understand more about the haplogroups is if you do genetic testing. Some people, of course, don't want to do genetic testing, which is understandable. If that's what you want to do, that's okay too. It doesn't matter. But the way I learned about the haplogroups, I did the Y chromosome test, which is a first I took the 67 section uh, haplogroup test, which is, doesn't cost as much. But then I paid the extra money. I got the 111 section Y haplogroup testing done. So what that does, it differentiates every person, every male, into a paternal family lineage. So, so what it is like each section is a testing or analysis of a section of your Y chromosome, which they use to compare everyone. So what it is that all the DNA is all the same, basically, with some mutations, of course, but we all have the same information. We just have different numbers of copies of that same information. So with each section in the test, because you'll get a string of numbers, a whole set of numbers, 13, 14, 17, 18, 20, whatever. What that represents is the number of the copies of information that you have, which is compared to the numbers of copies of the same information that everybody else has. So that might clear up a little bit, of what it actually is. Then, and they'll assign you a group, a possible haplogroup. But if you want to verify your possible haplogroup, you can do what they call a SNP test, which is probably already in your DNA. You just, pay the extra money or whatever it is they want, and you can verify your haplogroup by looking at various SNPs. Shalom, David. Uh, God bless. So, by looking at the different numbers of copies, you can assign everybody a family tree, and then you want to verify your haplogroup. You take a SNP test. So there's actually two Y chromosomes tests that you can take. One is the number of sections, which puts you into a possible family tree group. The other one is a SNP test, which verifies that you are indeed, and it'll actually put you exactly where you belong into the haplogroup family tree. So it'll verify everything. Then with the mitochondrial test, which is the maternal line, hope I'm not having too much trouble. Anyway, so with the mitochondrial DNA, the mitochondrial DNA test, it'll verify the maternal lineage of your mother. So whoever's mother it is, it'll go down through your mother, the mother that you're from, because you have the mitochondrial DNA of your mother. So that's the maternal line. But specifically right now, we're going to focus on the Y chromosome because Dr. Jensen came up with another video that I recommend everybody see. Take a look at his video because he's doing very important work as to the mutation rates. And he's making predictions and saying, well, you can find more ancient lineages of certain, you know, haplogroups. And he's like identifying a certain group that went out of Africa into Yemen and then went back into Africa up into northern Egypt and stuff. So, of course, the lineages go all over the place. They'll go all over the place. But he identified an quote unquote more ancient lineage. Not that any lineage is more older, not that any lineage is older than any other lineage, but that the origin of that lineage is farther back in history. So maybe that will clarify something too. So, and of course, the claim is that the out of Africa claim. They believe that everyone is descended from Africans. So they have these markers that connect all of the groups up of everybody in the world to Africans. He's confirmed R1B, yes. Dr. Nathaniel Jensen is an R1B, which is Mediterranean descendant of Ripfath in all probability, but he wouldn't agree to that, I don't think. Because I think he believes that the Japhethites are all Semitic. So that means all of Europe, all of Russia, all of Asia, China. He believes those are all Semitic. Somehow they got swapped with. He swapped the Semitic population swapped with the nations, and the nation somehow, you know, swapped with the people in the Middle East. It's just, anyway, that's another story. But Dr. Jensen is doing good work on the mutation rate, showing that the Africans have a faster mutation rate than many other populations throughout the world. And we can look at that pretty soon, right now, too. So what do we got here? Let me go ahead and do a little screen share here. We got the screen share going. And there we are. This here is an ancient DNA study. No, it's not ancient. It's an older study called the Simmons Genome Diversity Project. This is what Dr. Jensen was saying was the testing was done with less accuracy. Of course, now we have more accuracy in testing, and he goes through that as well. But even so, they were able to isolate these groups of A, B, C, D, E. And then there's F, G, H, I, and J is another group, seems to be another group, even though it's hard to tell because they're so closely related here. But like Dr. Jensen says, there's probably more ancient lineages that go farther back in time for these Hamitic populations. And the mutation rate here is a lot faster than a lot of these other, for example, European mutation rates. Of course, Q has different population. This might have been a European Q. But anyways, so we have these 3 different groups, major groups that are pretty much settled throughout the world. I mean, for most scientists, they'll agree that this F, G, H, I, J, K, H, I, and J are one group. K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, and T is another group. And of course, this is the African populations mostly. Is A, B, C, D, and E. Now, some of these charts will show a little point right here as being the root, where they believe that A lineage is the progenitor of the rest of this populations. You know, unlike what this is showing here, because this is just genetic distance. This is these lines are not arbitrary. They're showing genetic distance, which is the number of mutations, not age. They assume that A is older because it's longer. They want to assume it, but it's a false assumption because it's a faster mutation rate and a greater replication or reproduction rate of that lineage. In other words, it's more more uh, generations, more generations in these lines here than there are in these lines here, for a whole bunch of different reasons. And but notice also that these lineages here are longer than the European lineages. So these European lineages are the shortest lineages with the slower reproduction rate, less genealogies, and less mutations. So that's what these lines represent is genetic distance, not age, not actual age. It's just that there's more generations and a greater number of mutations in this line than there is in these European lines, for whatever reason, a bunch of reasons, right? Same thing goes for here. These populations in the Middle East are larger than Europeans. Reproduction rate or genetic distance, and these in Asia and Siberia, and especially this K and these are. Notice how one T is short, one line of this T is short, another line of the T is longer. So it's both of them are the same age. It's just that one has a faster reproduction rate or more mutations in the lineage. So that's how it is. Everybody, when they take a Y-DNA test, they're going to fall into one of these categories right here. These are main categories. Now, what Dr. Jensen is talking about with finding new genealogies or new lineages, it's within these already established lines that he's talking about. It's not like they're going to discover anything past T, or they're going to have to name people with more letters. They're not going to have to name them with more letters. They're just going to be divided up into more lineages as they go along. So I guess that's not too bad. I guess hope I helped to explain a little bit about what the haplogroups are. Let me see. Okay, so yeah, let's just go. So yeah, so Dr. Jensen just came out with a video, and I recommend everybody go look at it and evaluate it. He's doing a great work on genetic distance and disproving the out of Africa theory as well. But the other thing to note on the out of Africa is that they want to root the tree, as I said, here with the A, when the information that we have now might be that it would be rooted with B anyways. But they want to root Neanderthals here when Neanderthals have more in common with this population over here. You know, whoever this population is right here, Neanderthals have more in common with them. And Lion Farm suggested, well, that maybe that was because of the mitochondrial lineages or the autosomal DNA that the Neanderthals most comparable to these lineages is. But the problem with that is that with the African population, the mitochondrial DNA is all in Africa. L0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 all these mitochondrial lineages are all in Africa, which is another thing, is that this is also a genetic distance chart, but this is the mitochondrial DNA phylogeny. But you still have these separated groups. You have this population here, which I've assigned to be Semitic, and then you have this population here, which I have assigned to be the northern nations, which is C, D, G, M, and some other ones. But the problem is that this mitochondrial DNA is totally absent in the European population, which the European populations are right here. See the same short genetic distance? You have the same short mutation rate with the Europeans, which is HV and R in Europe, just like we had before with the R and the Q with the Europeans, the short genetic distance. You have the short genetic distance with the mitochondrial rate in Europe as well. So that this is a different lineage than this over here, which is out in the East. In the East, the mitochondrial DNA is this right here. But in Europe, it's this right here. But even so, the European populations still have Neanderthal DNA. It's about half as much as the East Asians, but still, they have a significant amount of mitochondrial DNA from Neanderthals, none of which is from Africa. So that kind of like ruins the whole autosomal thing that the northern nations have the autosomal DNA from Neanderthals, because the East Asians have the most Neanderthal DNA. The Europeans have about half as much, but they still have a significant amount of Neanderthal DNA, while the Africans have a lot less Neanderthal DNA. So how in the world are you going to connect the root here with A with the Africans? How are you going to connect it with the Africans when Neanderthals have more in common with this population here, this entire population here? This is East Asia here in the Y chromosome, paternal lines. This is Siberia and the Siberia. This is East Asia. And of course, these are East Asia as well. And with the exception of K, there's a K in Italy as well, which is the same K, same haplogroup. And the M and the S are in Papua New Guinea. They're both from the same lineage of K. It's just they're Asian. But the Neanderthals, and especially Denisovans, are associated with the K, the M, and the S as well. So both Denisovans and Neanderthals have more in common with this group here than they do this group in here. Because, of course, this group here, which is in East Asia or South Asia, this group here has more Denisovan DNA than this group here, than anybody else, than the Semitic group. And the ones lacking Neanderthal DNA are the Semitic, this group here, the Semitic group. And it shows up on the maps, which I've showed before. But the problem is with the root of the tree. Where do you root the tree? So as I was looking at the phylogeny, this of course is a true phylogeny. It's a genetic distance phylogeny, but it's it doesn't have, is not showing the SNPs or the changes in the DNA or the markers, the genetic markers of the DNA. So when I was looking at the genetic markers, it was hard to understand because they have it. They have the root here or here with A or B, and then everybody else came from A and B. But of course, the problem with that is that Neanderthals are found in Europe and Asia and Denisovans, and they have more in common with this group here. So how can they be descended? How can they be the root of the A and B? They can't possibly be the root of A and B. So that's one thing to note, because even if you consider the mitochondrial DNA, the Africans still have no Neanderthal DNA with this mitochondrial DNA. This population here in Asia, the mitochondrial DNA in Asia, East Asia, has the most Neanderthal DNA. And it's not African. So both the mitochondrial DNA and the Y haplogroup DNA have more in common with Neanderthals. So as far as I'm concerned, it totally debunks the out of Africa belief, or trying to root the tree with the A and the B, which is over here. And but it's interesting to note that the European mitochondrial DNA has this same short genetic lineage as these Europeans here. Of course, the Q is a little bit longer, but R1A, R1B, R2 is more in India. Q is, all over. That's why there's one line here by itself of Q, but it's still a Q. But anyways, so you can't really root the tree with A. So when I went to go look at the other evidence, the genetic evidence, we'll look at the genetic evidence, which is right here. This is the out of Africa belief. See that this is the Y tree. You have let's zoom in on this here. Okay, so notice you have the A00, which is A, but the A00, they keep on wanting to add zeros to represent Neanderthal and Denisovan. The only problem is Denisovans are a mixture with the African population and the Eurasian population. And the Neanderthals have more in common with strictly the Eurasian populations, which is over in this area. Remember the K I was talking about? The K, the M and the S, and the K is also located in Italy as well. But we do see this, looks like a T. Yeah, T is in the Mediterranean. T is largely represented in the Horn of Africa because Greece had trade with Africans, and to this day they still live there. So this out of Africa belief is totally debunked because of the fact that Neanderthals have more in common with the other end of the family tree, which is all this K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, and T. So this Eurasian population here has more in common with Neanderthal DNA, both by way of the mitochondrial, and the Y paternal haplogroup. So it's totally debunked the out of Africa theory to begin with. So then, when I went to go look at the SNPs, which they're not showing the SNPs here, but this is what they're representing. So I go to look at the SNPs. If I can find the SNPs. What is this taking so long? What happened to my computer here? Okay, here's one. Here's one here. Okay. When I went to go look at these markers, this is exactly how they're trying to prove that everyone is from the A and the B, because they have these markers. So they're assuming that these markers were gained. So they assume that this marker here, BT, which is everybody in the world basically, besides A, they're assuming this is a new marker that was attained. Because I was staring at this for ages. I'm trying to figure, well, how can they have this stair step out of Africa when we know that out of Africa is wrong? Because I just proved out of Africa wrong, because the Neanderthals are more closely related to this other end of the spectrum here, this other end of the family tree. So I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, well, these markers are real. So this BT is a real marker that's shared with B and the rest of the world. This CT is a marker that's shared with C and the rest of the world. And all the way on down the line, that's how they have this all connected together. The CF is different because it's C and F and the rest of the world, excluding D and E, which is supposed to come later. So it makes a separation. So this marker here separates the C population, today's C population, with the D and E is separated. So the D and the E is totally separated by markers from the C population and the rest of the world, excluding D and E, because of this marker here, CF. So it's C and F and the rest of the world. This is C and the rest of the world, including DE, but this one here is CF, excluding D and E, C and F connecting to the rest of the world. So I'm looking at this, I'm saying, well, how in the world can this be when we know the out of Africa is wrong? So then, since the Neanderthals have more in common with this group here, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, and T, then that's where the root should be. So I'm thinking, well, this thing is totally backwards. It's exactly backwards. So then it dawned on me here that these markers here are not gained markers. They're not gaining a new marker. It's just that the populations going right to left are losing these markers. It's that C had this marker in common with the rest of the world, but D and E lost this marker. Same thing with this marker here. It's not a gained marker, but it's just the fact that, for example, this marker here is lost to the B and the A. So instead of gaining the marker, they're losing a marker, an identified marker. The same thing with the A, they're losing this marker here of the BT. The A, both these A branches, there's two A branches here, both of them lost this marker. So they have it exactly backwards. Instead of gaining a marker, these are actually losing a marker. So what do we have? That means because of the fact that Neanderthals are more closely related to the Eurasians, which makes all the sense in the world because that's where they're found anyway. That means that the Neanderthal root, if there is a root or connected somewhere, Neanderthals, of course, they're another lineage, but connected here. Because these people are the people that have the most Neanderthal DNA, the Eurasians. So if we root the tree here, that means these are the Eurasians, these are the nations, and that means that I and J here shares a marker, is IJK. That means that I shares a marker, this M523 shares a marker with Eurasians. So how can that be? Well, that's because I and J would be Arpachshad. He's the eldest son of Shem. That's why he shares a marker with his uncle Japheth, because he's the eldest brother. But this marker, M253, is lost to Arpachshad's brothers, the other sons of Shem, which is the H and the G and the F. They lost this marker. So these stair steps are not going down this way. They're going down this way because this is where the root of the tree is. They're not gaining a marker, a new marker going this way. They're losing a marker going this way. But then when you get down here, these are this IM 170, for example. These are markers unique to this lineage. These are all markers unique to these lineages here. But the assumption that a marker was gained making a stair step out of Africa is totally false. The truth is that you're losing markers, and these markers that are shared here is the eldest son. Same thing over here with a C, with a CF P143. This marker was lost to these D&E, and of course DA2. But that's because C is the eldest brother of the eldest brother of the eldest son of Ham, which is Cush. But C retains this marker with the rest of the world because he's the eldest son of Cush, who is the eldest son of Ham. So that's why C retains this marker and the rest of Africa doesn't. Is because Nimrod is the eldest son of the eldest son of Ham. Of course, Nimrod, being the king of the world, had many descendants. That's why he has this C Hamitic marker or descendants. These C descendants here, these C descendants are spread all the way through Mesopotamia, all the way into Europe, all the way east through Asia, all the way to America, because of the number of sons of the first king of the world, Nimrod, had, who was Hamitic, the son of Cush, the son of Ham. It can't be anybody else. It can only be Nimrod, because that's the only possible person who could have that many sons would be the first king of the world, Nimrod, who was the king, of course, of Mesopotamia, Shinar, and all his descendants, all the Sumerians with a bunched up hair behind their heads, on their neck, and the curly beards and everything. Those are the descendants of Nimrod, who is the son of Cush, who is Hamitic. But of course, all their wives are Semitic maternal DNA. But these this C goes all the way into America, which explains the Olmec statues looking like Polynesians, because Polynesians have the same C paternal Y chromosome. The Polynesians have the C2. In America, they have the C3, and of course, C3 goes through Mongolia as well into America. C4 is in Australia as well. So the only possible progenitor of this Hamitic haplogroup, which is connected to A and B, comes right off of A and B, because, of course, B would be Cush, B being the oldest son, or B or A. A is the descendants of Cush, B is the descendants of Cush as well. But the only thing is going from right to left instead of from left to right. Because, of course, the Eurasian Japhethites, the nations, he's the eldest son of Noah. Shem is the next son. According to mathematics that people did in the Bible, Japheth is the oldest, Shem is the middle, and we know the Bible specifically says that Ham is the youngest son of Noah. So we can't possibly have the root with the youngest son of Noah, because the root was already established with the older brother. So there we have it right here. The older brother, Japheth, is K. This IJ is Arpachshad, because he shares this marker, IJK, with his uncle, Japheth, which is then lost to Arpachshad's other brothers. The other sons of Shem don't have this IJK marker anymore. Then the stair step keeps on going down. Then Nimrod, the sea is connected to the rest of the world, is by way of the fact of him being the oldest son of Cush, who is the oldest son of Ham. So that's why he shares the marker of the rest of the world, and the other sons of Ham do not. So these are the other sons of Ham. This is Cush up here. A and B is Cush. C is Cush, of course, by way of being Nimrod. D and E are the other descendants of Ham. D, of course, being probably the tribe of Canaan, of course, because there's E1, E2, and E3. E2 being the tribe of Canaan. D is on the same level as E2. So D is probably Sinim, the tribe, the Canaanite tribe Sinim, that went into Sinai and later went into the land of Sinim, which is China, all the way to Japan, all the way to the end of the earth, which is known as the end of the earth. The East Asia, Japan, is known as the end of the earth as far as East Asia is concerned. But anyway, I stared at this for hours trying to figure out how in the world they have this stair step backwards. It's because it's exactly backwards. They're not gaining the marker. They're losing the marker as you go from right to left. They're losing the markers. And of course, if you did more study, you'd probably be able to verify the stair step going down from Eurasians instead of out of Africa. But they just don't want to believe the out of Africa. They don't want to believe it's wrong. They don't want to believe the biblical narrative because they don't want to believe the Bible's true. Okay, so let's see. Okay, see if we can read this here. Just hoping. There it is. Okay. So, David is saying the two Koreas, Y DNA paternal line is about 20% are N1B, In contrast, the fourth largest Ashkenazi DNA is also N1B, but Jewish DNA is from empty DNA. Okay, what David is saying is that Jewish lineages are determined by the maternal line. Well, that's what the custom is, customarily. But we still have the tribes of Israel who are through the paternal line. So, for example, the Kohanim are from the Levite tribe of Aaron, or Aaron belongs to the tribe of Levi. So that's a separate tribe from the tribe of Judah, which would be J2. But the Cohen modal haplotype is J1, something, something, something. Okay, so the Koreans, yeah, they're N1B would be the Siberians. The Siberians are in, not N1B necessarily, but the Siberians are in. So that's where the N comes from. The fourth largest Ashkenazi DNA is also N. I don't remember N being in the Ashkenazi DNA, but let me see if I can confirm that in a little bit. Okay, so go. Q is about 6% Ashkenazi. Q is interesting because Q is always seems to be a part of the Jewish populations. It's true that the Q, which I believe is the Medes, has a significant part of the population, but for another reason, I believe. A recent study shows Gadala tribe of Papua New Guinea has Q. Well, yeah, Q goes all the way to America. Q is in Europe. Q goes all the way to America. And Papua New Guinea has Q. Okay, Professor Pitt actually denied Papuans has no genetic connection with Jewish. Well, they're connected by way of Q, which is it's Q is would be the Japhethite descendants of the nation. That Q is basically belongs to the group of the nations, unless you want to go with Dr. Jensen's swapping the people out. We have the Philippine Negrito ethnic group known as the Aita Mabukan have the highest level of Denisovan ancestry in the world, in fact. Okay, so it's a Negrito, and also the Papua New Guineans have a very, very high Denisovan population of DNA percentage. Yeah, so that would make sense too, because the Denisovans are actually a mix of Hamitic and Eurasian, while the Neanderthals are strictly Eurasian. That's what the difference is. Okay, they carry considerably more Denisovan DNA than the Papuan Highlanders, who were previously known as the present-day population, the highest level of Denisovan. Okay, so apparently David has some more recent information showing that they even have more Denisovan DNA than the Papuans, Highlanders. Okay, Shalom Keith Colvin. So now what I wanted to check was this Q in the Q is part of Ashkenazi. It's the other one I want to check. The N. I don't remember the N being part of the Jewish population, but N would be Meshech, and I don't know how. But let me double check on that. Let me just go ahead and look at the Ashkenazi population, see what's in there. So let's go back here. And see, just keep continue here. And of course, Q is in America. Of course, we already should know that Q1 in America, but there's also Q2 is in Europe. Q2. This is showing Pacific Islanders. Okay, this is the Q in the Pacific Islanders. Okay, and the Q in the Middle East. So it's Q2 in the Middle East, but Q is also in Europe. Okay, so this is Iranian. This is Portuguese. Now, as the Bragança Jews here, this is the mitochondrial DNA. That's the mitochondrial DNA. So the mitochondrial DNA of the Bragança Jews and the Belmonte Jews is H. H and H and H and H, yeah, basically H. So that's consistent there. And of course, European general population, host population is largely H as well, but it's more a V. I guess is that a V or an H? Looks like more of a V, which is the same lineage as well. So we'll just say that this color here, I don't know, is that color? I guess it's that color. It's hard to say. These colors don't even, well, it looks like a V. I guess I didn't know that the host population, the Portuguese population, was largely V. I didn't know that. V. And of course, the R lineage is this one over here. And the U lineage, no, the U, where am I? Oh, it's the N. They got it backwards. Okay. You got the L, the M. M is Asian. And the N. Oh, that's what it is, the N. So the W to X, the X and the W in Europe is the other Semitic line that accompanies the Q population. So maybe, I don't know, David said something about the mitochondrial DNA of Q, but that's another lineage, but that was Semitic way back. That was in the time of Shem when it separated. So this X and W is the Semitic line lineage that was married to the Q population or follows the Q population. Because there's an X2 in America and there's an X2 in the Middle East. But the Q is interesting because it's always seems to be a part of the Jewish population here. I don't know if it is here or not. There's another map of but here's another one. Whereas the Semitic line, the Asiatic Semitic line is P, B, and maybe Y minus and F. So the F, the P, and the B, all these B's are the other Semitic mitochondrial lineage in the Philippines. But there's no paternal lines of the Jewish population anywhere in this area. But this P, the F, and the B, uh, yeah, they're not the A lineage. The A lineage, the X and the W is one lineage. This B, the F, and the P is the other Semitic mitochondrial DNA lineage, which came apparently to the land of gold, but none of the Y chromosome people are left yet, or lineages are left. Only the mitochondrial is left. Okay, here's the Here's the Braganza Jews with the Y chromosome. So let's see how much. See if we can find an N in here. No, there's no N. No N in this population of Braganza Jews or Belmonte Jews. What we do have is J. Of course, in the Braganza Jews, you have the R. Of course, the biggest population is J. Keep in mind, the biggest population is J in the Braganza Jewish population. The T is interesting because the T is in this area, this area over here. So the fact that they have that much T in their population is interesting because they may have had an association with the Javan C people, T people in this area that were down here. But that's a significant amount of T right there in the Jewish population, which Dr. Jensen believes that T is the Jewish Y chromosome. So that's the largest population. The largest percentage of T is right here in the Braganza Jewish population, but the greater population, of course, is still J. The Portuguese host population, of course, is R. And these others, well, there's some E from Africa. There's more E. And there's G. G is interesting because G accompanies the Jewish population as well, which is, I believe, Assyrian, because they were expelled to Assyria several times. And I believe that's why they have the G in their population, which is Assyria. And of course, the I, we know who the I is. The I is me. Oh, and David too. David's an I2, I'm I1. But I don't see an N in this population. Of course, this is far from Siberia, so we'll look at some other ones here. Here's the other ones. This doesn't have any T. These Mediterranean populations don't have any T, which is interesting because the Mediterranean population is full of T in this area because they're the Greek Sea people right here, located right here in this part of Greece, the islands of Greece. And they traded with the Horn of Africa. They're still today in the Horn of Africa as well, in larger populations, the T. And they're found in India as well because they're sea peoples. But we do have, of all these this is Sephardic Jewish populations in Bulgaria, Turkey, Mediterranean, Libya, and Morocco. And the largest percentage is always J2. There's J2. J2, 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 J2. It even distinguishes between J2 and J1 and I. We got a little bit of I here because the region is I2. There's a huge region of I, but this is probably more associated with the original Jewish population, this I, which would be the descendants of Dan. So what else we got here? What else we got? We got, of course, African here. In African, you have Africa. North Africa, you have Africa. In Italy, you have Africa. But look at this huge population. 2/3 of this population in Italy, or this area of Italy, Mediterranean, 2/3 of the population is J2. Libya, a good 1/3, greater than 1/3 of the population is J2. And there's J1. Then there's J1. Or J1. And this is interesting too because there's the G population again. This light blue, which is over here, would be the Assyrian population. That's always associated with the Jewish people, the G as well. But which is not, it's not Semitic, but it's always associated with the Jewish people, the G's, like a signature kind of thing here. Everywhere, all this light blue, that's G. But I don't see an N there yet. So let me go ahead and find DNA, the world's population of DNA. Largest population in the world is O. And then, of course, if you combine the R1A and the R1B, it's still not as large as the O population. There's the Q population, a sliver. So the O population and the R1A, which are all Japhethites, they're all Eurasians. And the Bible says God will enlarge Japheth. The largest populations in the world are Japheth. Almost half of the world's populations are Japhethites. In fact, the L and the K are Japhethites too. The M, the N. Here's the N is Meshech, is Siberia. M, L, K. Yeah, so more than half of the world's population are descendants of Japheth, or Eurasians. All they starting here from here, J, I, K, G, F. That's Semitic, and then all these A, B, C, D, and E is Hamitic. So about a quarter is Hamitic, less than a quarter is Semitic, because of course they're like in the middle where all the battles were. And the Eurasians are the largest population in the world. Okay, so here's another example of the stair step, which is not going this way, it's going the other way because the root has to be here. So the stair step is going down from the Eurasians down to the youngest son, Ham. Now here's the Ashkenazi Jewish population now. Okay, so let's see if we have an N in the Ashkenazi Jewish population. We got the I, we got the Q, we got the T. These are all signatures of the Jewish population. Of course, the R1A, the R1B, and the G. Look at the amount of G. G is always a significant population or a part of the population. Of course, with the J being almost half the population of the Ashkenazi Jewish people, who are, of course, the reason why they're called Jews is because they're descended from Judah. So the Y haplogroup of Judah would be J2. J1 is other populations. This is mostly J2 anyway. But we have the J in the order of most is JE. Oh, we got a significant. No, that's not the percentage. Not the order of percentages, but anyway. It's JEG, R1A, R1B, T, which is associated with the Phoenicians, and because the Jews had an alliance with the Phoenicians in the days of King Solomon. That's why you have the T in the Jewish populations. Q, it's for another reason, it's the Medes, but it could. I just want to double check to make sure how much of this Q is from America and how much is it from Europe, how much is it from Asia. I would like to verify that. And the I, of course, being the Danite populations. Now we have the Sephardic Jews. It's the same thing. We have the J, the E, the G, R1B, R1A, Q, I, and T. Same thing. No N that I can see it. So I'm not sure about the N in the Ashkenazi population or. Okay, let me see. Balkans. Here, Balkan Turks. Balkan Turks have N, but that's Meshech. Once you identify, and then it's interesting. You can, there's J2 here, J2 here, or I2. Oh wow. Of course, the Balkans. This is the area of the Danube. That's why you have I2, 20% I2 because you're in the area of the Danube. That's what the Balkans are. But they call them Turks, but of course, 30% E1B. R1A, R1B. N is from Meshach because that's also close to where everybody came from. So some of Meshach ended up in the Balkans because if he went north and they went around the Black Sea, they ended up in the Balkans anyway. So you have J2, I2, huge I2, I1, which went all the way up into Scandinavia. Okay, the Uyghurs. Uyghurs are a population along the Silk Road. And look what we have here. Look what we have here. We got J2, 34. The largest percentage of the Uyghur population is J2, Judaic, descended from Judah. J2, not J1, J2. Because it's along the Silk Road where the Bible says that Jews would be coming from as far as Sinim. J2 is Judah in the land of Sinim, China. Uyghur population right there. And of course, R1A, K, here's a huge, because of course this is Japhethite in the area. Of course, this K is interesting because this is not too far away from the Denisovan Cave. Denisova Cave. So this is interesting. This K, 18% K, is interesting because it's not that far from the Denisova Cave, where they found the finger bone of the Denisovan female, which only has mitochondrial DNA. So we have the R, N, there's a little bit of N, D, which is Sinim, from the Canaanite tribe Sinim. Q is from Madai. O is Magog. C is Nimrod. Look at this. Only 4% of the Uyghur population is O. Oh, here's more O here. There's 6%, 4%, 10% of the Uyghur population is O, or from Magog. 34% is Judaic. H is Elamite. This is Elam. R1A is Ashkenaz, the son of Japheth, Ashkenaz. And K. K is Tubal, actually. So K is Tubal. This is descendants of Tubal here on the Silk Road where the Uyghurs are. And K is also found in Italy, where they also were known to have been. Tubal. Assyrian Y DNA. Here's Assyrian. Now, it says Assyrian, but I doubt there's going to be much Assyrian DNA. Assyrian DNA would be G. 10% Assyrian paternal haplogroup. The rest is from the outside. R1B is from the outside. J1's from the outside. T's from the outside. J2's from the outside. E1B1's from the outside. All these are from the outside. The next biggest population is G, that's what the Assyrian descendant haplogroup is. Because of course they mixed a lot more with the other populations, whereas the Ashkenazi Jews didn't mix wherever they went. I mean, as much, not nearly as much anyway. That's why the Judaic populations have large number of Judaic Y haplogroup, because they didn't mix with the people nearly as much as, for example, the Assyrians did. But there's Q, yeah, and L. L is the Thracians. We got a little bit of Thrace in the Assyrian pop. Wow, that's close. Thrace is not too far away from Assyria anyway. And the F is like Aramean or something. Aramean or Lydian. That's what F is. So this little amount of F, wherever it is Assyrian or Aramean. I mean, Lydian or Aramean. That's what F is, because there's two F lineages. There's F1 and F2. There's two F lineages. Okay, so I guess that's pretty much it. Okay, so we got, let's see what we got here. Oh, I forgot to take this off. Shalom, rebuke, and reprove. Jesus is Lord. Shalom. Random Green. Very interesting. Got to back to work lunch. Break over. Thank you, JJ. Got to, yeah. All right. But glad you could be here, Random Green. And if anybody wants to subscribe to my channel, I have almost 400. I might get to 400 soon. Or I had almost 400 anyway. Okay, so that might be about it for right now then, because I think I covered enough, talked a lot. I don't know how well my broadcast came through because let me see. Where's how do I do it? Forget how to do it. Okay. So I just wanted to go over some of the basics on the Y haplogroup and how to understand it. And it took me a long time to figure out how that stair step doesn't come out of Africa. It actually goes into Africa because it goes from right to left, not left to right, because the root has to be grounded in Japheth. You root the tree with Japheth, and the stair step goes from right to left, not left to right out of Africa, because of course the descendants of Ham are the youngest descendants. They wouldn't be the root of the tree. So there. But anyways, you're the most accurate expert on DNA. Oh wow. Yeah, it's very interesting to me. I really got into it. I thought I was, especially when I found out that I was descendant of Jacob. Then I had to study. But yeah, Jacob is my paternal ancestor. So God bless everybody. Take care. Even though I'm from a wayward tribe of Dan, I'm still a descendant of Jacob. God bless everybody. Take care.